Welcome, educators, parents, and scholar gamers to the Academy of eSports, Episode 8. I'm your host, James O'Hagan. This is the podcast where I delve into topics surrounding education and eSports. eSports are organized competitive video games allowing schools to redefine their athletic culture, diversify opportunities for student participation, promote physical and mental health, increase collegiate scholarship pathways, and play games. We cannot forget the importance of play. The mission of the Academy of eSports is to support these ideals, and it is the vision of the Academy of eSports for all students to experience the fun and joy of playing competitive video games. In this episode, we revisit many of the ideas from the last 3 episodes around physical and mental health, so let's get started. Hi, I'm James O'Hagan with the Academy of eSports, and I'm here with Dan Himmelstein. He's the CEO and brain coach at the Premier Esports Academy. Dan received his master's degree in sports and performance psychology from the University of Denver. His experience in esports psychology training includes those at the professional and semi-professional level. In addition, his history in gaming, coupled with one of the very first research studies on integrating performance psychology and gaming, makes him one of the most well-prepared esports psychology trainers in the world. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk with me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, there's probably a lot of people who, my podcast kind of goes to people who are educators who aren't yet, or parents who have not yet seen how do we connect esports and schools together. And they're probably also wondering how the heck do we connect psychology and esports together. So tell us first a little bit about the Premier Esports Academy.
Absolutely. So I've kind of focused my career on helping esports players optimize their performance from a mental standpoint. So that's talking about things like confidence, anxiety, emotional regulation, mindfulness, how to stay in the present moment, how to stay task focused, how to really set goals to make sure that they are efficient and that you can complete them and that it's actually going to take you to where you want to be. So a lot of people kind of set willy-nilly goals. The classic New Year's resolution example is, I want to change my whole life tomorrow. And it's always that tomorrow. If you really want to make a change, it's going to happen today, and you don't need to wait for a silly holiday to do so. So really making sure that players stay focused, players stay on track, and players are doing all the right things to actually advance themselves.
And I heard some things there that educators may pick up on right away. One of the things I believe I heard was mindfulness. Tell for somebody who doesn't really understand what mindfulness is, can you explain that a little bit for us?
Absolutely, yeah. Mindfulness, it's something I've written about a couple times, and it's really a pretty hot topic in the performance world, especially in traditional sports and even in esports. I see some players and teams talking about it. So mindfulness is all about being in the present moment. It's being task focused, being just being there. It's the opposite of doing things mindlessly. Making sure that you are dedicated to the task at hand and that you have the ability to stay in the present moment. Because every one of us, the mind has a natural tendency to wander. We've all been there. I always like to give the example of, have you ever been reading a book, James, and realized you were halfway down the page, maybe even a page later, and you actually didn't read anything. You were just kind of going through the words, and your mind had wandered off onto something different, and then you realize, now I got to go back and read that whole page over. Well, things like that, it actually happens every day in our daily lives, and oftentimes we don't even notice. So it's making sure that we are staying in the present moment. We have the ability to do so, and we can do it at the right time.
Is that something you can just switch on? Is that something we can practice? Is that something that can be taught? Again, as educators, we would love to have our students not blank out on us during the day. So how does an educator bring that in?
Yeah, so mindfulness is a trainable skill. There are all types of practices and all types of exercises to help train mindfulness. Some of the easier ones that I really like, mindfulness eating. How many people have eaten a meal out there and, just were watching TV or doing something else and completely didn't recognize what they were eating, and it may have been their favorite meal in the world, and they didn't really sit down and enjoy it. So mindfulness eating is a really interesting exercise, and we all eat every day. I should hope, at least. Bringing your attention to it and saying, sitting down, doing only that task, tasting all of the flavors, making sure to recognize the textures, and just really putting your focus onto the food in front of you. Another thing is mindfulness walking. A lot of people, they go to work every day, they just kind of walk back and forth, they're in their normal routine. Sometimes they don't even, you look back after a drive to work and you're like, how did I even get here? My mind just did it automatically. So, taking a breath, taking a moment, looking around at your environment, noticing actually what's around you, and just staying in that present moment non-judgmentally.
So if I was an esports coach, and again, these are skills that I want to bring into with my students, how do I start to bring this into esports? How do I start to get them to think about this in an esports realm?
Yeah, so far I've had pretty good success translating this into the esports space. But some kids, they're not going to enjoy mindfulness training. There's a really great book out there that I've picked up recently. It's got a lot of really great mindfulness exercises for almost all levels. It's called How to Train a Wild Elephant, I believe is the title. And it takes you through a couple different exercises that really are really, really useful and can be used every single day. It's things that we... a lot of mindfulness training is done by using things that we do every single day. So it's, noticing how your right and left hand actually work together, what they're actually doing. Those are two amazing pieces of equipment that we have and often go unnoticed, but the way our right and left hand work together, it's just so in sync, so in unison that we don't even have to think about it. So, taking a moment to notice, like, where are your hands? What are they doing at certain times? Whether it's just through your daily routine or, while you're cooking or something like that. It's really just training your ability to put focus on something and keep it there.
You say that too about knowing where our hands are. As I think about if I was a coach wanting to train a student or helping a student try to maximize their performance in esports, one of the things I might do is just, as you said, just watch their hands or record for them, while they're in a match, where their hands are going. Again, you say it's very natural for us just to move our hands. As you see, as I'm sitting here talking, I'm trying to make gestures with my own hands as I talk to you to kind of get my ideas out. It's kind of the same thing with gaming.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It might just be that, hey, your performance could get increased just by noticing where it is that your hands are being placed in a match, for example.
Yeah, and so I don't want to confuse this with in-game training. This is for mindfulness training. I definitely don't recommend watching your hands while you're playing. It's probably better to watch the screen and let your hands do the actions. But this is really just for like day to day, how to actually get good at being in the present moment. Because a lot of us, when we do start mindfulness training, another exercise is just focusing on your breath. That's one of the easier ones. So many people will sit there, focus on their breath for 10 seconds, and all of a sudden they're off thinking about something different. It's like, wow, I can only focus for 10 seconds? Like, what's going on with that? It's like, I got a whole League of Legends match to play that could last, for over an hour. I got to make sure that I can maintain focus for that long. So people are often very surprised at first at how quickly their mind wants to wander. So when you start training this, when you start noticing, doing the exercise like looking at your hands or, focusing on what your hands are doing or focusing on your breath or any of the other mindfulness training techniques, you'll recognize that, our minds want to wander much quicker than we want. So when we do start to train it, we'll start to notice our ability to maintain that attention longer and longer and longer.
Wow, okay. So actually taking the time to practice breathing, for example, would be something that I would want to do as a coach with my students.
Absolutely. And, breathing is one of the biggest things that I teach as well. I use some biofeedback and take a look at respiration amplitude and frequency because we all know, breathing gives oxygen to the brain. Oxygen to the brain is a good thing. It helps you make good decisions. It helps keep you alive. So if we can get an optimal amount of oxygen to the brain throughout our game, we have a better chance at setting ourselves up for making the best decisions throughout that game. So a lot of the time what I see is players will either hold their breath or shorten their breath and go and then during downtime in game, like I use this example in Overwatch, I actually have a video of it somewhere, they'll die and all of a sudden it's And then once they go back to engaging, once they're back set up in their spot, they go back to their nasty breathing cadence where they're just not getting an optimal level of oxygen to the brain, which in turn affects their gameplay. And it's very, very difficult to see until someone tells you, hey, you're not breathing at all throughout that game? Like, you should practice this breathing cadence so that way it comes naturally throughout the game.
And see, these are some of the things that as teachers, we talk about these things in health class, or we talk about these things in PE, and there's very ever little translation that takes place from the classroom into a situation like in an esports event or in other classes in the classroom. I mean, I've seen students who get stressed out over tests, over quizzes, over having to give a presentation. And having these skills, I think, would serve them well. And like I said, it's one of those things that just can carry into so many other things. So it's great that you're bringing this up. Even in matches when your heart rates can get up to 160 to 180 beats per minute, having that controlled breathing that you're talking about is something that a skill that we wish a lot of our students had, even who aren't esports competitors or scholar gamers.
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes down to it, life is a performance. Well, what we do applies across, many different domains. Even myself, I've worked, not just with esports, but I've also worked with traditional athletes at all levels. I've worked with law school students, helping them deal with and managing their anxiety about their tests. I have colleagues who work in the executive level roles, working with CEOs on how to help them maintain mental toughness and mental strength throughout their careers, because it's an incredibly stressful type of performance is being a CEO. And so at the end of the day, performance psychology, these skills apply to such a wide range of people and performance domains that it really is a truly, obviously I believe it's an incredible service.
Now, a lot of the students that I work with do deal with things like high anxiety, depression, when we're talking about mindfulness, but I kind of want to switch gears talking about that. And I want to talk about, too, the perception that, a lot of times gaming it does not support good mental health, that it only contributes to thoughts of violence, that it contributes to isolation. How is just being a gamer different and today? I mean, what misconceptions or what kind of misconceptions do we want to dispel right away about gaming and gamers, I guess you could say, in regards to this realm of mental health?
Yeah, so the argument we've heard it 1,000 times is that gaming incites violence, and excessive gaming is no good and it isn't good for nutrition or diet and all that great stuff. So unfortunately, part of that is true. If you do sit on the couch or sit in your chair for 10-15 hours a day, and that's all you do, and you don't have good nutrition, good health, that's not good for you. But I preach balance in everything. I preach balance in gaming. I preach balance in sport. I preach balance at work. It's really important to make sure that you're taking care of yourself physically and mentally. And if you're not, whatever you're doing isn't going to be good for you. You have to make sure that you are doing what you need to be in a healthy mindset and a healthy standpoint. So, gaming comes with all these different stereotypes and different stigmas. Thankfully, esports is really coming to light lately and showing the general population that these people who are identify as gamers or esports players, they're not just people who waste their lives away playing video games. They're learning super valuable skills, which I think we'll probably get into later when we talk about kind of the applicable skills and the experience that you can get while gaming to help further yourself and further your career, not just in the esports space, but just in a career standpoint. But the stigmas that exist, I think a lot of them are really going away over time, where we're starting to recognize that this is something that can help cognitive ability, can help sharpen your technological skills. It can help create a social environment that you might not have access to in school. A lot of A lot of gamers, they often feel isolated in their face-to-face peer groups in school, whether that's just in high school or middle school or whatever that might be. But these people may look like social outcasts there, but when they go online, they're leaders of clans, they're IGLs, in-game leaders. They're talkative, they have a community, they're on Discord, they're communicating and really a part of a much larger community that just because it's not seen face-to-face doesn't mean it's not there. So, the isolation is one that a lot of people talk about, the social isolation for gamers, but in an online environment, it's very likely they're social butterflies and have a very, very healthy relationship with some of their teammates, some of their competitors, and the like.
Is it and you kind of you touched on this a little bit too, but is it you talk about having balance, and I kind of want to get back to that for just a second, because the stereotype is the gamer is going to be the one who sits there and plays for 10 hours, and you say, well, we can't have that help. That's not necessarily good. We got to have that balance. But for some kids, this is going to be their social, outlets. This is going to be their social structure. So how do I as a coach, or how do I as a parent start having conversations with my kids about finding that balance, about the necessity of balance? I've really gotten into lately, my own personal self has been getting into sleep. And it may sound like a silly thing for us to kind of get into, but especially when we're talking about gamers who usually fall in that 14 to 21-year-old range is when that prime gaming time is. Sleep kind of becomes like this thing that a lot of those kids stereotypically fight. But how do I start preaching that importance of balance as a parent or as an administrator or as an educator to my students?
Yeah, and this was definitely a question that I took a good look at, and there's really two ways that I want to answer this. One, it's really, 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 really important for coaches to have an understanding of the game that they're representing. As a coach, you're representing. So it's really important for those coaches to at least have a minimal level of understanding of the game. I didn't want to put this all on the kids who are gaming, this question. I didn't want to put all this on the kids who are gaming, because, if you put something in front of me that I love to do, I might want to do it for 10 hours a day as well, no matter what it is. So it's understandable that they want to take time and do this because they love to do it. So it's really, really, really important for coaches to take a good look at the game and gain some respect by speaking the language, by having an idea of the general concept of the game. These people, they don't want to be treated, these young men and women, they don't want to be treated just like your run-of-the-mill athletes. That's if they wanted to be athletes, they would. So it's important to recognize, their individual performance domain and have a good level of understanding. And especially with esports, it's got to be the most accessible performance domain there is. With Twitch TV and constant streaming and YouTube out there, esports is being broadcasted 24/7 live. And no other performance domain in the world really offers that. You can't tune into a football game at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday and watch a live match, from some of the best in the world. It's just impossible. They're not playing at that time. So with esports, coaches have a really unique opportunity to connect with their players and to get an understanding of what they're watching, why they're part of this community. So that's part one of that answer. I just wanted to make sure that was very, very clear, because it's not all on the players. Now,
stop you really quick just on that first part, because you did make mention of Twitch, and Twitch is something I don't want to discount. If you're somebody, again, a parent or an educator who doesn't know what that is, Twitch.tv is a website you can go to and pretty much watch, as Dan said, you can watch people playing video games 24/7. Twitch has made live TV something worth watching again. There's this perception that Generation Z and the millennials are not watching live TV. They're just not watching live TV that people of my generation watch. We want to watch live sporting events, or we would watch TV shows because we would have to watch it at a certain time. but the belief was, oh, these kids are cord cutters. A lot of these kids never even had a cord. So this is just how they're getting, and this is the world and the medium that they're existing in right now. So if you don't know what Twitch.tv is, I highly recommend checking it out. In fact, right now they're running 500 episodes of Doctor Who, streaming constantly from the first episode from they started it last night, and they're running it all the way through to July 23rd. So they're going to run every episode of Doctor Who on that. And trust me, kids are watching it. And what makes it different is the social commentary built into that environment is really fascinating for people to see. So that's my commercial plug. And I'm sorry I didn't want to interrupt your second part of your question. So I just want to make sure that everybody understood what Twitch is. So
yeah, absolutely, it's important. If you want to understand what your kids are playing, why they're playing it, definitely hop onto Twitch.tv. It's free, which is also the really great thing about it. The traditional sports are constantly hidden behind paywalls and things like that. So tune in, get an idea. It'll certainly help you at least pick up the language and general concepts, which will take you a very long way. So the second part is making sure that coaches are scheduling a very structured practice. Once they earn that respect, then their players are going to want to be, and then, players are going to want to give back a little bit, Once you earn respect, players want to give back, and that's something very important. But without that respect, we're not going to get that. So, when designing schedules, that's going to be super important, especially for a high school esports team. But what you don't want to do is ruin video games for these kids. You don't want to make them feel like every day they're coming in to something that they don't want to do, and that they're being tested and being critiqued all the time. You want to build a community that people want to be a part of, and that's really going to take you a long way. And you want to build a community that maybe not your everyday gamer, maybe someone who's never played a video game before wants to be part of this community now, because it's a great community to be in. You see these guys and girls, they're in their local computer room or LAN center watching big live events. I think that's a really cool thing for high school coaches to do, is to organize watch parties, take them to local colleges, show them the college esports programs, because there's tons of them now. All across the country, there's college esports programs with their own dedicated LAN centers and things like that. So organize group trips, make a really, really awesome community that people want to be a part of, so that they're willing to mold their schedule to what you guys are now setting forth. So the expectations are, school has to remain in line. You guys are scholar competitors. You have to make sure that you're keeping your grades up. You have to make sure that you're doing the right things in school. Otherwise, you can't be part of this awesome community until you get that straight. Once you have an awesome community built and these people want to be a part of it, they're going to help shape their whole lives. They're going to shape their lives around it and make sure that they can still participate, because it's something that they love to do now.
Diving into with that is called self-determination theory. I mean, that's the whole concept of people want to do some things intrinsically, like intrinsic motivation for what you get people doing is fantastic. As soon as you start putting expectations on people, like for example, the classic one that they use in self-determination theory is a kid loves to read and will just read books. Well, as soon as you put them maybe into like saying, hey, I'll give you $10 for every book that you read, it creates an extrinsic motivation. It removes some of the joy out of what they were doing before. So what you're saying is you got to honor that intrinsic motivation, what brought the students into wanting to be part of this, and making it still an enjoyable experience without putting too many extrinsic pressures on them to do things within that club or team, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I try and stay a little bit away from the technical terms, but yeah, self-determination theory 101. If someone's doing something that they love, all of a sudden you introduce an external reward, and then 2 weeks later remove that external reward, that person's no longer going to love doing what they were doing before, now that they've had that external reward. So you're spot on there.
Yeah. Well, okay. And did I cut you off? Because I want to make sure you get all that out. It sounded like you had a little more to say on that second part.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just creating that community is going to be the biggest thing, and with that, balance will come. if they know that they need to maintain a certain grade point average and they know they need to get their homework done and that time is allotted for them and they feel that they have the time to do that, as well as being part of this community, and that can even be built into the community. All right, guys, homework done before let's get into the scrims. Then that's something that we can go down. But yeah, just really the two things: three things: creating the community, setting clear expectations, and allowing them to complete all the tasks involved.
And it sounds like what we're going to move into right now is we're talking about how do we develop a culture and team cycling, because you wrote extensive. I loved, if you haven't seen it, and I'll put it in the show notes, Dan wrote a fantastic article for the Acer Predator website about team cycling. And it's something that I think everybody goes through, whether you're doing this as an eSports team. When I was a classroom teacher, we actually went through team cycling when I was a self-contained 5th grade teacher, and I had the same 30 students all day. It's funny that don't think that this is just an eSports thing. Dan, tell us about team cycling, because this is really something that I think when I read it, I went, oh my God, I went through all these things with my students, and I've seen this on a football team, and I've seen this when I coach girls basketball, and tell us about team cycling and culture development a little bit.
You got it. Yeah, I think it's a really, really cool dynamic that I try and talk about almost as much as I can, because it's something that everyone goes through. You're spot on. If you've ever been on a sports team, if you've ever entered a new job, if you've ever been in a classroom, you've seen this before. So team cycles, typically there's 4 main cycles, which is forming, storming, norming, and performing. Forming, everyone's coming together, everyone's happy, everyone's excited. It might be the start of a new season is when we see this a lot. Everyone's just super hyper motivated, ready to just get to work and get going, which is great. And then a couple weeks go by and the summer break jitters are over, or the new team jitters are over, the new team hype are over, and things kind of start to rub against each other, and that's when we kind of get into that storming phase where roles are starting to get hashed out. There may be some criticism, some feedback that wasn't taken so well. A lot of things go through creating a successful team, and a successful team environment, so that there's a lot of conflict, and conflict is good as long as it's productive. It has to be productive. We can't be sitting there laying the blame on each other, pointing fingers, making each other feel bad, taking personal digs out on each other. That's going to ruin a team. We all know that. So as long as conflict is directed at making the entire team better and not taking personal digs at people's play style, or and just making sure that everyone's feeling accepted, making sure that your opinion is heard, but making sure that we are giving each other feedback and making sure that that feedback is constructive, so that those people can then use that feedback to get better. I apologize. So making sure that so that's really the storming phase, and we've all seen that, and that's a lot of the time I kind of consider that the tipping point of teams. That's when we can tell if a team is going to be able to move past that, or if they're going to crumble under that storming phase and break up or get new members. And the addition of new members, the removal of members, it resets this whole cycle. Teams are constantly cycling back and forth between forming and storming, and as well as the next stage is norming.
Wait, just one second. Because you kind of said this. This is not a linear upslope, as you just said. You will move. You'll move across this. This is going to be something where depending on how your team structure is set up, you're going to move in and out of these different phases all along the way. So. Sorry, go on, please.
Oh, yeah, that's a great highlight there. This is not linear whatsoever. It is a cycle, and often teams never make it to the performing stage and fall apart before that. So, hopefully we can make it past the storming phase pretty successfully by really navigating that conflict well, having an outside perspective, making sure that these feedback sessions are staying productive, staying constructive. Then, hopefully we can set some real norms and have some cultural norms built into this team system. So, we all, now that we've made it past the conflicting stage, we know what's expected from us. We know what the roles are on the team. We know our day-to-day tasks. We know what the organization wants from us. We know what the coaches want from us. So not only is this just from the player side, but it's also from the organizational management standpoint. To have a really successful team moving forward, the team can't feel like the organization isn't behind them. That's huge. The team has to feel that the organization is supporting them and behind them for whatever they need, and then making sure that expectations are clear. We know how to communicate. We know when our feedback sessions are. We know when practice is, and we know what to be expected when we sit down for practice. We know that we have to come in here focused. We have to come in here ready to perform, ready to train, ready to work on skills that we're needing to improve. So that's kind of that norming phase, and that hopefully all of this can be timed into say a regular season. So say a League of Legends split. You want to make sure that you're timing your performing phase for playoffs, for your mid-season invitational, for Worlds. You want to make sure that you are able to. I don't like to use the word peak because there's only one place to go from a peak, but to make sure that you're at your prime performance, that you're performing, your whole team is performing as well as they possibly can, and that is from setting up those norms. It's from having those clear expectations over your training weeks, months, whatever that is, to now hopefully you make it to the performing stage where everything is just in line. You guys are able to mesh, you guys are able to gel, you guys have trust, you guys trust each other, how each other are going to play, how each other are going to perform, so that way you can go ahead and put your best performance forward when it matters.
So, and as we said, this is a cycle, so you can move between all these different phases, and as an educator or as a coach at a school, that reset point is going to be your new school year, when you get your new students in, when you get your new students coming up. So this is a normal thing, and like I said, I've seen it in other things, whether you're in the classroom or whether you're a coach of a sport. I've seen it happen as well there too. So all these things are great. Now the last thing in the time that we have left, Dan, is one of the questions that I sent you ahead of time is we want great gamers, but we also want great kids who can use this experience to launch themselves and other things. How do we keep a kid from just locking themselves away from playing games all day? How did you even, looking at your background, were you a gamer? Were you somebody who said, wait a second, I could also apply this into other fields like eSports? Tell us, how can we get kids to launch into other things through this medium of eSports?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things I talk about all the time is making great kids in and out of their game, making great players, making great people in and outside of their performance. So the really, really cool thing about esports is the only career path out there isn't just becoming an esports player, a professional esports player. There are so many alternative careers that surround the gaming industry. And I was just talking about this with a colleague the other day. There's now executive level positions with many professional sports teams like Dallas Mavericks, Houston Rockets, New England Patriots, Golden State Warriors. Yeah, these are all massive teams that are hiring executive level positions dedicated to esports. That's fantastic. So okay, not only can you be strive to be a professional esports player, you can strive to work with some of the biggest companies in the world at executive level positions, and then we can go down the road of game development, game designers, programming, coding, artists, sculptors, event management, marketing. The list just goes on and on and on about the opportunities in this really new and exciting esports and gaming field. Gaming and esports, I promise you, James, and you can take my word for this, this industry isn't going anywhere. the gaming world is going to be around for as far as humanity can see, because people love to play games. People love to interact with their friends, and they love to goof off and take the stress off of everyday life. And technology, it's only advancing, it's only getting better. So the games are only going to get cooler and more exciting and more more intriguing and capturing. So anyway. There's a ton of opportunity for players who love games, and you spoke about balance, and if you find a kid who wants to play games for 10 hours a day, I'm going to tell you probably found a kid who found their passion or who found one of their passions. So let's take that and run with it. I can't tell you how many professionals and adults that I see every single day who choose a career or choose a job for a paycheck, and they hate what they do. They wouldn't spend a moment outside of work doing what they do at work if they're not getting paid for it. Now, if we can find a way to get people paid for what they love to do, talk about job fulfillment. So, it's a really, really cool thing to have this new gaming and esports world where, these players are so technologically advanced. They're constantly, not only are they just playing on their PCs, but they're also navigating the web. A lot of them build their own computers, make their own rigs. So they're learning skills that can be translated into some of the most desirable careers to date, like coding and software engineering now. So that's a huge advantage. If you don't spend any time on a computer and you want to get into a software engineering field, good luck. Like, it's going to be a nightmare, and that's some of the higher paying jobs in the world right now.
And what's funny is that a lot of times, one of the biggest arguments I think we find right now in the esports world is when people say esports athlete, and it brings up this really visceral reaction from some people who say you can't. And I've actually gotten away from using the phrase esports athlete. I prefer the term scholar gamer when I'm talking about kids who are in school who are doing this. But what's fascinating to me is how professional sports now are connecting into esports, and not just by owning teams, but by also using the technologies that are being developed. When I was a kid and I would sit and plug baseball statistics into my Pete Rose baseball simulator, or no, Earl Weaver baseball simulator, it was always fascinating to me. I go, wait a second, these guys with high on-base percentages, if they're always getting on, they should be the ones I want on my team. And it used to be that, home runs and RBIs were these big things. Well, now data people have taken over baseball, they've taken over basketball, they've taken over, hockey even is looking at things, analytics like that. The NFL obviously has analytics. The guy who is probably the best GM, as much as I hate it, the guy who's the Cubs GM, Theo Epstein, he's a lawyer by trade, and he's a numbers guy. He's an analyst. He just knows he can look at the inefficiencies in the market. And what you were talking about right there is somebody who can find an inefficiency and exploit it in a positive way for their team is going to be somebody who gets that next leg up. It's not cheating when you find in a game that there's this inefficiency built in. It's that, you found that Easter egg, that inefficiency that allows you to have an advantage over your opponents. It's really a beautiful thing. And as you said too, all the other things that are involved with it, as you're in your role as being somebody who's into sports psychology, that's just another field that a kid who goes, well, I like gaming, but I'm a terrible gamer. But I can really do these other things. It's just be connected into that positive culture as much as you can.
Absolutely.
So, Dan, we only have just a couple more minutes. I wanted to give you an opportunity to promote anything that you wish. So if you wanted to talk a little more about the Premier Esports Academy or website or whatever, please do.
Yeah, so if you like what we talked about today, definitely make sure to check out the Predator Training Room. I'm constantly putting out some really cool content on there. We have some really awesome content creators alongside myself, not just in the psychology world. I do most of the psychology stuff, but we also have really awesome content-specific, game-specific content creators. So we have people doing, professionals from League of Legends, Dota 2, CSGO, Overwatch, and I'm missing one. They're going to hate me. Dota 2, CSGO, Overwatch, League of Legends. So, definitely if those are one of your games, make sure to get on there, take a look. We also have Jake Middleton, who you actually spoke with last week, James, who does a lot of the physical side as to where I do the mental side. He does the physical side. So that Predator Training Room is a really great resource. Feel free to reach out to me anytime for performance psychology training needs. I work with teams and individuals. I just love to help people optimize their own performance, be the best that they could absolutely be, and just maximize their own capabilities. Make sure that they're able to perform at the upper echelon of their capabilities in any given environment, whether they're playing the best team in the world or playing my team. I want them to be able to perform as well as they possibly can. Thank you, James. I appreciate you having me, and wish you the best of luck here, and can't wait to do some more work together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That will do it for this week on the Academy of Esports. I've been your host, James O'Hagan. You may follow me on Twitter at JIMOHAGAN. That's at Jim O'Hagan. And while you're at it, you can also follow the Academy of Esports on Twitter at TAO Esports. Again, that's letters TAO ESPORTS. It's a great way to get the latest blog posts, podcast episodes, and news coming out of esports and education. And remember, you can continue your engagement by going to www.taoesports.com. And through Flipboard or your favorite RSS app, you can follow the latest in esports news and research directly impacting education, carefully curated by myself. The links are right there on the website. You can also connect through Facebook at www.facebook.com/TAOesports. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to our time again next week.